Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Craft of the Draft podcast. Another week of Talent League footy wrapped up, and I'm one of your co-hosts, Nathan Seppi, once again joined by Jonty Ralph Smith, the other co-host. Jonty, tell me about that week of football. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was a really good week of footy. Got to watch a bit, obviously, with the doubleheader on Saturday. Saw some Thursday night footy out in Ballarat, and obviously Good Friday as well. The big derby with Sandy and Oakley. Sandy getting it done easily, but some good storylines to come out of the weekend, which I'm looking forward to unpacking.
No, for sure. And we're going to start a bit differently this week. We didn't talk about it last week purely because this news came out about 30 minutes before we recorded and didn't have enough time to look at it properly. But there was diversity academies that were announced. A lot of age ranges. So there was a lot of 15, 16-year-olds that were in these, but a couple of names I think worth mentioning. I'll talk about the boys quickly, Jonty. These are all part of the multicultural academies. There were none in the Indigenous academies, but we've got Riak Andrew, Dandenong. We've talked a bit about him. Keep back. Isaac Kako, obviously been in a lot of conversation for Calder. Lamont Lawal for GWV has been fantastic in the first couple of weeks. You got to see him on Thursday. Jaden Ewan for Calder's had some good moments to start the season, and Mahmoud Taha, who's been fantastic as well, had a great game on the weekend we'll touch on for Calder. So that's for the boys.
Yeah, really like Jaden Wynn. Gonna be curious to see what he produces throughout the rest of the season as a bottom major for Calder. Still quite lightly framed, so a lot of upside with him. But from a girls' perspective, we've got Jamaica Douglas from Bendigo, who went reasonably well on the weekend considering the result, and we've spoken about her quite a bit. Nathan Ballapaka, who's part of that ominous forward line that Tassie have got, is part of the Indigenous Academy, as is Jamaica, and then Remy Callender from GWV, part of the Multicultural Academy, as is Judy Goldman from Sandringham Dragons, and Tara Quinn, a defender from Dandenong. So that's some names to keep an eye out for, and something to be aware of, Nathan.
No, for sure, definitely. And now the next part, if you watch this full podcast, if you follow us on socials, you see we do tipping, which is quite odd because no one does tipping for this competition but us. So we like to think we are the rare ones out there that do tipping for this competition. But I finally counted the results because I haven't been keeping track. But I thought there's no point of doing tipping if we're not going to keep track, right? So I calculated them. So Jonty is up by 4 in total. This is combined the boys and the girls. I am leading for the boys 19 to 17. Jonty's leading for the girls 16 to 10. So one of us is better at the other, but Jonty is ahead by 4. But tipping will be fun with this comp because unlike the AFL where the teams stay the same each week, in a couple of weeks' time, it is sort of you're back to square one. You don't actually know who's going to be playing for each team each week when APS football starts or the Metro team. So it's like it will be fun. Be a good thing to keep tabs, and I think a lot of players, we've heard some good feedback about the tips, so it's a nice little fun thing to add to the podcast. But
obviously not taking away, I suppose, just worth mentioning, not taking away from the fact that it's obviously an individual development program, the Talent League, and results are often secondary. But it has been fun so far, and it'll be interesting to see how the results progress throughout the season, Nathan.
It will be interesting. Bit of context before we start this podcast. So the AFL Academy are playing this week ahead in Adelaide as part of Gather Round's whole event. Actually, what's your perspective on Gather Round, just quickly?
Yeah, don't mind it, and really looking forward to seeing if it comes off as a concept. I'm probably unsure of it until this time next week where I'll be able to sort of reflect on it, but I'm not overly negative or positive going into it either way.
It's interesting one, but good that the Academy boys get a bit of a show, get to showcase their talents in front of a lot of people. So which will be interesting to see, and that's something we will talk about next week in our next podcast. But let's get straight to our reviews. So round 4 for the girls, we just witnessed. I'm struggling to keep up now. But that 1 week off for each boys and girls is a bit confusing sometimes. But this one's you, Jonty. You were you made that trip to Ballarat, GWV 3-1-19. They lost to Geelong by 13 points, 48-32. We thought the Rebels would probably bounce back because, like we said last week, this was a game played 3 weeks prior in a regular season match. So wasn't to be. Geelong get the double, you would say. So tell me, Sarah Alley was a big standout. You chatted to her post-match, and go to our socials to hear what she said after the game. But tell me a bit more about the prospect of that game. Who else stood up for both teams?
Yeah, I suppose to start with, it was an outstanding game from Sarah Howley. I know I texted you sort of saying, I reckon she got 40 disposals, and in a girls' game where they play 20-minute flat quarters, that's outstanding. She obviously ended up getting 36, but she seemed to have her hands on the ball throughout the entire game, and her ability through traffic, I know we've seen it in the first couple of rounds. She sort of had a quieter round 3 as Oakley sort of sent a tag to her, and that sort of took her out of the game a little bit, but her ability to do it in all conditions, we saw it in a really hot game when GWV and Geelong played first, and then we saw it in a really wet game, and then we've seen in more mild conditions in round 2. She just produces, and her skill set is conducive to any sort of conditions. So she's been one I've been really pleased with, seeing her ability to sort of keep fighting throughout the whole game and drive out the front of stoppage. Millie Lang was the other one from GWV for mine that was really impressive. She would have taken at least 4 or 5 intercept marks, I would have thought, really clean on a wet Ballarat night. And Molly Walton always cracks in there as well. So she continues on her strong start to the season. So those two I expect to push into Vic Country, or certainly put their names around that mark. Isabella Davies, another one who had her best game of the season on the wing. From a Geelong perspective, the other name to mention beyond Sarah Howley was probably Maddie Seabeck. She is one I've spoken quite a bit about with the club, and they're quite high on what she can produce, and she sort of showed why to some degree on Thursday night. She'd obviously go better in dry conditions, as I'm sure a lot of the players would, but her sort of territory first play was really important, and I thought she withstood a lot of GWV pressure coming inside 50 or inside GWV's 50 throughout the night. So she was another one I really liked. They would probably be the main names, Nathan.
No, well, we've seen quite a bit of both these teams now, and there's definitely these players who we've talked about are now playing consistent footy. It's good now, a couple of weeks on, we're able to see that they're playing consistently. So a good game to start the round off with, and now we move to Gippsland and Dandenong. We've spoken about Gippsland's struggles. It is tough for them. It will be, unfortunately, similar to last year, where they did go winless, but we're hoping they get a win for the sake of the competition. It would be nice to see them get a win throughout the season. But Dandenong too powerful, 12-13, 85 to 1-2-8. Neither of us were at this, but we've heard a bit about this game. Jonty, tell me who stood up for Dandenong on a day where they probably were able to possess their best assets. And from Gippsland's perspective, who's still standing up even under that adversity throughout the games?
Yeah, I know earlier in the week, Nathan, we did a social media post on Sienna Lane, and she's one in defence that has stood up each week despite the difficulties of, how many inside 50s they have had to repel. But she has certainly lost no admirers, and she's certainly stood up each week. Amber Shute was another one on the weekend from a Gippsland perspective, and also Ash Centra. We know that they're both part of the Vic Country camp, and they certainly showed why on the weekend, just with their competitiveness and sort of never say die attitude, I guess you could say. The positive with Gippsland is they do in 5 or 6 weeks, when they play next, is against the Northern Territory Thunder. So that'll be a nice even matchup for Gippsland, not just for those top end girls, but also for some others who perhaps haven't had the opportunity to show their strengths, and forwards and those sort of players who could come to the fore when Gippsland have an opponent that's probably a bit more evenly matched to them. So hopefully that match turns out to be as good as we hope it to be. For Dandenong, like you say, it was probably all those sort of Vic Country type players who were able to stand up. Michaela Williamson, we know she's had a really strong start to the season, but the big storyline from that one was that Ali Simmons, a bottom-aged ruck for the Stingrays, was one who really put her hand up and her name forward as someone who not only was good in the ruck contest, but was also an extra midfielder on the ground. She got 20 hit-outs and 23 disposals, was even able to float forward and kick a goal. So she's one who caught some eyes, and yeah, will be an interesting watch to see if she can back it up against stronger opposition going forward.
Definitely. We now move Calder and Murray. I caught the first, I'd say, quarter and a half of this game. It was a domination. Calder 10-11-71. Murray was scoreless. I mean, from what I watched, it's hard to think Murray went scoreless, because you'd watch them and you don't think, wow, they don't look good at all. Like, they play some good football. It was just really their forward entries just don't they just weren't leading to anything. There was no one there to really make an impact, which is where I think hurt them, because they were able to transition the ball a lot at times. So I wouldn't look at that and think Murray won't provide anything, because we have seen from their first couple of days, first couple games, they are able to provide a spark. But Calder, look, I personally, I never look too much into games where one team has won by quite a lot, because obviously most of the team's going to play well. It's the games where they're closer, where players will stand up and you'll see these type of players make an impact. But, I mean, still, at the same time, players I'd like to talk about for Calder, Sarah Grundon was one that made her name very prevalent. 3 goals, 18 touches, and a good contested mark. Definitely proved that. Was able to get her hands on the footing. It was bucketing down rain in the first quarter at Highgate. It was hard to see on the stream. So, in tough conditions. So, the ball was there. I mean, the rain went off after a while, but still a wet ball. Amy Gaylor, obviously prevalent in the midfield. She's always going to get her hands around it. Probably a quite a first quarter from what I watched, but she turned it on the back half of that game. Kaylee Cavagna as well, 22 touches and a goal. For Murray, Ali Armstrong, Molly McLaren, Sam Pepler, names that have been playing consistently. Obviously a game where it's going to be hard to really make an impact, but those are names who have still been playing really well. So that's from that game. We'll move now to the doubleheader of the same teams, with the girls at Box Hill. You were at this, Jonty, for a bit, I think, but this was originally at PCO, but was moved. The ground wasn't ready. I'll speak on Eastern's side, and you'll speak on Northern side. Eastern were winners in that one, 8-12-60. Defeated Northern Knights 5-4-34, and hard to look past Alicia Pisano. She also defeated the Northern Knights, if you look at her score. That's ridiculous. 10 goals in 2 games, averaging 5 a game. And it was hard, even asking Ash Close about her. You want to ask a question that's somehow, what's she doing well? It's pretty obvious what she's doing well. But I think for Alicia, it's just impact per possession. And she's doing that every time she touches the ball. It's leading to a scoring opportunity. It's leading to a actual scoring shot. So she's been magnificent, hard to look. I mean, she'll just be up there come the end of the year in your top 10, you'd assume. It's just fantastic what she's giving at the moment.
Well, I suppose it's positive as well that, you always have question marks. We obviously have on the boys' side George Stevens' return from an ACL, and we'll speak about him a little bit later, but he's been able to come back in and adjust really quickly and show why he's so good. And Alicia Pisano on the girls' side, it hasn't taken them any time at all to show their class. So it's really good to see them going well. But who are some of the others, Nathan? We know that Eastern are quite talent-laden.
Yeah, no, well, Laura Stone's one that she has the potential to play a bit down back, but she's been playing a lot of her time in the midfield, just getting her hands on the ball. But performing really well, and just her contest-to-contest movement is really strong, making an impact on each play. Ava Campbell, the captain, we do have a video with her that we have locked away, so that is to come out eventually. She's just, Ash said, byproduct of pressure up the ground, takes her opportunity where the pressure's there, good in transition, and then just her ability to mark the ball in contested situations has been really strong at the moment. Jess Vukic is one, a ruck key forward that I've sort of been keeping a bit of a tab on. There was one to keep a watch out for. Really strong vertical, but she's been performing really well. Her physicality is really showing on the field. So those are probably the main ones for Eastern to touch on at the moment, but we'll move to Northern. Jonty, tell me a bit more about who performed well for them. Tell me about Winnie Buckley, Talia Plunkett, how have they been performing?
Yeah, they were really important in the midfield because Northern did actually break even in the midfield with Eastern. So that was something that was quite pleasing from the Knights' perspective. And those 2 names that you mentioned were probably a big part of that. I know they've obviously been names that we've spoken about throughout pre-season as being performers in both the intra-clubs and the earlier rounds for Northern. But yeah, they were able to do it against a stronger opposition, which is really good for them. And you mentioned Jess Vukic earlier, obviously go through the ruck. So does Lauren Jatzak, and she created a really good contest for Northern. So you talk about that really interesting midfield battle. She was one who's obviously a key part of that in the ruck and feeding her midfielders. Those girls, though, I mentioned Winnie and Talia, both their defensive stuff and what they did in preventing Eastern from getting out the front of stoppage was also a feature. Then you look on the wings, Phoebe Hargraves, Paige Graham and Holly Ridewood all sort of held their shape well, and they're certainly learning that position week on week about how to impact and how to ensure they're doing what they need to be doing defensively, but then also rolling up and getting involved on the attack, and they were able to show that on the weekend. So that was really positive. And we've spoken about Ava Jordan as well. She continues to show her class and composure with ball in hand. So they were probably the main ones from Northern's perspective in what was a good contest out at Box Hill City Oval. Sandy and Oakley, another one who had a boys and girls doubleheader out at RSEA Park. It was Oakley who got up 7-7-49 to Sandy 3-3-21. From what I've sort of heard, that game was probably played more so on Oakley's terms than the scoreboard necessarily shows. I know that Oakley have been very high on Emma McDonald throughout pre-season, and she was one who really stood up throughout the game, but she particularly had a 5-minute purple patch where she kicked a couple of goals, took several contested marks, and that's something she's done the first couple of weeks as well. So they're continuing to show themselves, Oakley, as a team that is going to be in the upper echelon of the competition. Obviously, they've got some AFLW Academy members and some Vic Metro listed players, Gemma Rigoni, Lara Horsiger, Sienna Tallaridi. They all performed as well as you would expect. And Sarah Powsky was a hard-running winger who played her role magnificently on the day. So they were the contributors from an Oakley perspective. From Sandy, I got to watch them last week, and they do have some players who were really good. So who caught the eye from their perspective, Nathan?
Well, Scout Howden definitely best on the ground for Sandy.
Right.
She's been. I mean, we've both seen a bit. I saw a lot more of the girls last year. Obviously, I was there last year at Sandy, so I've got a bit of a head start, I guess, on these girls. But Scout was just terrific in the midfield. Really, I mean, she's smaller, but her burst speed is fantastic. Agile, especially to break off a lot of contests where you need that type of play to just get the ball out of contested situations.
Is she
really
good?
I have to double check that because I think she is.
Yeah.
Sandy's definitely a younger list in terms of where their talent is. So there's a good chance she is. No, but she was playing a lot on the wing this on Friday night. Great running. So she's one that's definitely been out there to start. Georgia Foran was one I'd like to touch on, and I thought she was unlucky last year to not get drafted, to be quite honest. But she's been performing really well to start, and I think she's one that her interceptability is just fantastic. Her ability is well one-on-one. She doesn't usually lose out on these contests. You can put her on that key forward, and she'll most likely keep them at bay. She's been pushing up a bit more up the ground just to show her running capacity a bit better. So she has been moving a bit forward. Maddie Torpy, ruckman, dominated the hitouts for Sandy. Well, both teams dominated. She's been really, really good. And I think the next step for her, probably to move forward and have a bit more of a forward impact, just sort of to get out of that just ruck, personality of, not having. So going forward is her next step and converting on the scoreboard. And then two others I think Martha was very happy with as well. Isabella Bacon been performing really well, getting her hands on the footy a lot, just taking on new roles and making an impact in that Sandy team. And then Meg Webster obviously played last year, was a great asset to that Sandy team. She's been great in the half back line and impacting really well, good with her rebound 50s and her ball. Her aerial impact has been really good as well for Sandy. So some good signs for Sandy. It's quite odd to say they're 0-2. Usually you'd expect, your Metro sides to be starting really strongly, but they've played probably two of the toughest teams to play in their first 2 weeks. So they'll be looking obviously to get their first win as soon as possible. And now we move to the last game for the girls. We were at this one, Bendigo and Tassie. Bendigo, it was a tough game for Bendigo. They went down by 32 points, 4-1-25 to Tassie 7-15-57. Arguably, you could have said Tassie would have won by more if they'd kicked straight.
Yeah.
But, I mean, both teams had their patches. I think Tassie got a hold of them in the second and just kicked away. But, I mean, with girls footy, usually the margins you're up by, like a big lead is not as much as you'd say a big lead is for the boys usually. So in the second quarter, they did that, and it was hard for Bendigo to ever get back into it. I'll let you start with Bendigo, and I'll go. We'll bounce off because we saw quite a lot. I'll mention we'll both combine for this one, but we'll start with Lucia Painter for Bendigo. We both first one we said we're like, she's on it, terrific. Yeah. She was great. She was starting in the back line. Tassie's forward 50 entries in that first quarter were pretty consistent, and she was just there rebounding constantly. Her positioning was fantastic, and then she was moved up to the wing where she had a bit more running impact and very versatile. I loved what I saw from her, probably the most impactful on the day. Lila Keck was doing what she usually does. We've spoken about her, but I think Lucia Painter, we haven't talked a lot about her yet. From your perspective, what was the biggest standout with her game?
Yeah, well, for me, it was just her ability to get her hands on the footy and then impact when she did get her hands on the footy. Like, I know you sort of, or I don't know if you sort of mentioned, but it was only 20 disposals that she had, and it felt like she had a lot more because of how much of a say she had on proceedings. So her ability to, get her hands on it, particularly early when the game was still in the balance. Obviously, it does get tough when Tassie do sort of get on top, but certainly when they are playing opponents who are more evenly matched, she's one who will come to the fore, and we know she's one who's been talked about as being a potential first rounder in her draft year. So certainly one to keep an eye on. And like you say, Lila Keck, another one, and Jamaica Douglas. I know you've been big on her and you've had some dealings with her. You liked her game?
Yeah, well, I thought for a tough day for Bendigo defenders where it was just not the exit outside of defensive 50 was quite hard. She matched her opponent really well. She played her role well. There wasn't really too many errors she made that were ever leading to a Tassie, a scoreboard entry or anything like that. She was just playing her role well. And for someone that's just solely working on development this year, she's still a bottom major. So a very big development year. She was just playing her role really well. We'll move to Tassie. I'll start with Tassie because these are two that stood out for me that you didn't have when we were there. But Maddie Lamb was really good for me. Recognised her with the helmet, so that was easy on the ground, especially to identify players we haven't seen as much before. But she was terrific. She was fearless around the footy, really went in for every contest and really clean with her hands. And it wasn't wet conditions, but it wasn't dry conditions either. So she played really, really well, I thought, and her ability to burst out of any sort of contested bit where she'd be on about one or two players coming at her, she'd get out of it. Her kicking was really good as well. So she's one I thought that stood out. And then Ava Reid up forward. You wouldn't think for her size she would be a very sort of contested forward. She's the opposite of that in the best way, where she will find space anywhere on the ground. She knows where to move to get the football and takes those marks uncontested, which is what any good forward would want to do, to get into space, get an easy lead. And she does that. 3 goals on the day. So she was really impressive for me. But from your perspective, from Tasmania, who else stood out for you?
Yeah, no, I think what you said about Maddie Lamb was fair. She was certainly an important midfielder on the day, and I thought she complemented Lucy Thompson really well, who was probably the player who impressed me the most, who has a basketball background, and it showed with her ability to sort of get out of traffic and her ability to fend off tacklers and that sort of thing. I thought her strength was a real feature of her game. She hasn't had a go in there throughout the first couple of weeks, but showed she's certainly more than capable of doing that in the future, and it's certainly whether it's a secondary position or primary position for her going forward. She certainly got the ability to roll through there again. Candice Belbin's pressure and ability to win some clearances was also really important from a Tasmanian perspective. I mean, they got on top in the midfield, so we've sort of mentioned 3 of Tassie's main midfielders throughout the day, and that probably shows that they did have the ascendancy from the guts. And then Georgia Clark, Tanisha Kikowak, and Grace White all sort of rotated through the ruck. So we know we've talked about Tanisha Kikowak. She's really physical in defence. She's able to have an impact aerially, whether that's, bodying her opponent off the ball or actually taking an intercept mark or spoiling. Her ability to do that on the day was really good. And then there was also that show of versatility where they've got the 3 tall forwards that we know the coaching staff have talked about quite a bit at Tassie, but the flexibility to roll them through the ruck showed on the weekend and allows them to get involved if they haven't been able to earlier in the game or in other ways. So that was probably what stood out for me from a Tassie perspective. But geez, Tassie Eastern this week is going to be a really good watch because I think they're the clear 2 standouts in the girls' competition, Nathan.
Good segue, because now we're moving to our tips for the girls for round 5. A quick round, I guess, in terms of games played. Yeah, we're starting off at Friday night. We'll be at this one. Jonty down at Shepley Oval. Dandenong and Oakley. A pretty big game, you would think. 2 teams evenly matched up. I've said to you, I'm going to stop back in the underdog. I don't even think there's an underdog for this match, really.
No.
But I think home advantage. I'll say Dandenong by 10 points.
Oakley have been ultra impressive, but yeah, I still think even though Dandenong have had a couple of losses, I think there's too much class there to not bounce back. So yeah, I'll say Dandenong by a couple of goals.
And then, as you said, probably the game of the round by far, Tasmania and Eastern. Eastern's first trip and only trip, you'd assume, to Tasmania. What a cracking game this will be based off what we've seen. And two teams that, in terms of like tactics, both teams know how to move the football in such different ways and complex ways. I'm going to say Eastern will suffer their first loss, and I'm going to say Tassie will do it at home.
Yeah, no, I'm sticking with Eastern. Eastern by a few goals. They've just got too much talent, and it just goes too far. They're too deep.
Fair enough. And now the third game of the round, Western and Calder. This one's at Avalon Airport. Bit of a twilight game, 4:30. We've seen good glimpses of both sides. Again, a derby, if you would like to say. But I'm going to back Calder in this one. What they've shown is just very impressive, and I think they're building on it each week as well.
Yeah, I really like Calder, so I'm gonna stick with Calder as well by a couple of goals.
And then the last game of the round, Sandringham and Northern at Moorabbin. It's like Sandy do need to get on the board eventually, because as much as it's not a short season anymore, you also don't want to be 0-3. Northern also have shown they definitely can take it up to anyone. I'm going to back Sandy. If they have to get it done in any game, it's got to be this one.
It's one of those rounds where all four of the games could go either way. I'm going to say Northern are going to win it out of the centre. Their midfielders are going to be too good, and they're going to win by 3 goals.
There we go. Well, that sums up our girls. We've been talking for a while, John. We seem to keep doing this, but people enjoy listening to who's playing well. So we'll keep going at it. Boys, let's move on to what was their round 3. Murray and GWS. Murray got the job done, 13-10-88 to GWS 39-27. Usually typical of the Talent League clubs to beat the academies, and Murray did the job. And a good percentage boost since they've had a bit of a struggle to start the year. But a couple names I'll talk about from Murray. Connor O'Sullivan, obviously the main prospect forward that we've spoken about. I think he performed well again, puts in the effort. I think now it's about conversion for Connor. Yep. That's something that's probably been lacking in his game, but terrific start for him, and he's definitely shown what he's capable of. Oscar Ryan is really shown the contest, one that's been racking up a lot of disposals in his first couple games, gets the ball in it. Brave in the air, probably one that should be pushing for the next Vic country selection. So keep an eye on Oscar Ryan. Kobe James, a smaller midfielder, but his ability to gain the ball, gain meters as well is really, really good. Clean with the footy and a good decision maker. He's been one that's really been impressing for Murray. Darcy Wilson, really good athlete, a great endurance and sprint runner. So good in both aspects of, I guess, your running capacities. Really, really good. Great ability to mark the footy, a really good goal sense as well, and probably shows his impact up forward the most in the games. And then Josh Murphy, natural footballer, and one I spoke to with Mark today that he missed the first 2 games for cricket, so talented cricketer as well. Could have played last week, but they brought him in this week. Got a lot of upside, and he's a bottom major, so he's just one to keep an eye on, really. Really powerful, clean hands, contested marker, and can play in the midfield as well, so one to watch there. And then Darby Wilson. So there's a Darcy and a Darby Wilson, so just to keep track. Bottom major again, a small defender, elite speed, competitive, combative, one to watch. But that's some summary from Murray and their first couple of weeks, I guess, with those players. But now we'll move to GWV and Geelong. I'm happy I got this tip right. I backed the Rebels to beat Geelong, who went in undefeated. You were at this, Jonty. The Rebels, 9-8-62, got over the line against Geelong, 7-13-55. I watched the first half of this game. Very competitive game. It was probably what we thought it was going to be. Both teams were just scrapping at it. It started to rain a lot, but I'll give this to you, Jonty. Tell me who impressed in person.
Yeah, I think GWV, from what I saw, had their best quarter probably of the year. Best. Yeah, they certainly played really well in the first quarter. They were really satisfied with what they were able to do, and that probably gave them the lead and set up a really enthralling contest against Geelong. Sam Lawler was the main name from GWV that really stood up. I thought he played the conditions really well, was good in and under, and is one who can rotate through the midfield and also go forward. From a Geelong perspective, Tom Anastasopoulos, I know he's one who people would have taken an eye on, even if they're just taken a look at the Coates League app at any stage in the first couple of weeks of the season, because he always seems to top the Geelong goal kickers list for the round, or at least get a couple of majors on the board. And his speed in person is really eye-catching, not just that ability to get out the back of stoppage or get out the back of a marking contest and crumb, but also closing speed. I saw a couple of holding the ball tackles where he was almost out of the frame, I suppose you could say, if you were watching on a screen, and really was able to close within seconds and win himself a free kick. So he's one who I expect is also in the frame to push into Vic Country. George Stevens accumulates a lot of the footy. We know his class continues to come back well from that ACL injury, and in person, I suppose, again, you can talk about his size. A lot of people do, but geez, he's a big boy. So yeah, he's going to bully a few players around this season. Joel Fraser did some eye-catching things, looking to open the game up for GWV. We talked about Lamont Lawal briefly off the top. He provides rebound and intercept in defence, and that's becoming a weekly proposition for him. So he's one to keep an eye on from GWV. And then Geelong's Angus Hasty is one who provides a bit of drive out of defence and was a really important player on the day. So looking forward to watching both GWV and Geelong actually again this week. We'll be out at the triple header of the country teams out at Queen Elizabeth Oval and Bendigo. So both of those, they're not playing each other, but yeah, looking forward to watching each team respectively.
Definitely, for sure. And now we'll move back to two Metro teams. You're at this one, Jonty, the part of that double header we spoke about before with Eastern and Northern. Eastern got the job done, 13-14-92, defeating Northern 8-6-54. Tell me a bit more about who stood out for you in that game. It's probably an interesting game in terms of we didn't really know what to expect in terms of matchup-wise. Both teams have had good games to start, but Eastern obviously got the jump done pretty well. So who impressed from Eastern to really put that scoreboard impact on in the end?
Yeah, no, I think I would have expected the scoreboard to look roughly what it did, just with how much top end talent Eastern do have. But Christian Moraes probably isn't considered one necessarily in that top end, and he's one who stood up when he was on the field. Now, he only played the first quarter and then probably 8 minutes or so of the second quarter before he got absolutely crunched by Northern's Parker Heatley and had to go off, got a bad back injury. We stopped play briefly, but he is okay, which is good. He was really impressive just with his ability. He's still quite slightly built as a bottom major, but his ability to win clearances and have a real impact in the midfield was really influential. 14 or 15 touches he had in that short time on the ground. So that sort of speaks to how impactful he was able to be. Then you also had Riley Weatherall and Clay Tucker. It was a day where the conditions were wet at times. Obviously, both of those key position players, and they were able to have an impact. So that's impressive for them. And Clay Tucker, one, I think you would say, who is going to be on the radar of clubs for the mid-season draft. And I'd say he probably won the ruck battle with Will Green from Northern, who's one of Northern's better players. We know he's in the Vic Metro hub. So that was a really good contest to keep an eye on. Jack Ryan back from injury and did well. Given it was his first match back from that ankle injury he sustained in round one. And then on the other wing, you had Caleb Windsor, who ran really hard and his kicking came to the fore. The main name from a Northern perspective was probably Drew Georgievsky, who just caught some eyes with his speed. So just one to keep an eye on. He was their best player on the day, I think most people would have said. Northern obviously fell away probably as the day did go on, but if he can back it up, then perhaps we might be hearing a bit more about him, but he's one we'll just wait and see. But I'll throw that name out there from a Northern perspective. Nathan.
Awesome. And now we move to Gippsland and Dandenong. Jonty, I mean, with the girls, we weren't at this one either. It was a big, big day for one of Dandenong's players. Dandenong got the job done 14-13-97 to Gippsland 10-10-70. Now, Jonty, you said, I think Miles Enders for Sandy would kick 6 against Oakleigh, which was in last week's predictions. Someone did kick 6. It wasn't from Sandy. It was from Dandenong. So tell me, who was that player?
Yeah, Ziggy Toledo Glasman, an excellent game from him, and one who I'm really glad has been able to put that performance on the board, because I really liked what I saw from him as a draftable talent towards the end of last year when he was able to come in. He obviously didn't have a full run at it through the year because of injury, but certainly when he did play, he was one that impressed me. So to bring it all together for one game and show all sorts of different avenues to goal was really impressive. I think for people who did watch it, I wasn't one that did watch it, but speaking to people who did, he was clean below his knees. He took some marks on the lead. He took some contested marks, drew some free kicks just with his aerial presence and that sort of thing. So it was really impressive. Had some finishes around the corner as well. Kicked Dandenong's only 3 goals of the second quarter when Gippsland were coming at them after Dandenong did get a really good start. So a really impressive game from him, and one to watch as a mid-season draft prospect. Billy Wilson continues pushing his name forward with his drive and ball use out of the back half. So he's one to keep an eye on. Can also play wing and inside mid as he did last week. So he will look to push into Vic country, and I know they're really happy with what he's produced down at Dandenong so far. And then all your usual suspects, your Cooper Simpsons, your Sam Frangalises, Kate Delarue had his best match of the season as well. So a good performance from Dandenong. From a Gippsland perspective, their best player on the day was probably Seb Amoroso, the captain, who never stopped trying in the midfield, and obviously they were beaten in there. But it was a good captain's performance from him. Paddy Island down back played a lone hand and was quite poised as well. So those are a couple of names. Paddy Island, one who we haven't heard as much about, but he has had a reasonable start to the season. So another one, we'll wait and see if he can continue that form on, Nathan. But moving on to Calder and Western, neither of us watched this one. But Nash King, having performed really well against Sandy as a bottom major last week in a losing cause, did it in a winning cause with 28 disposals. Hugo Garcia kicked 3 goals, which I was really happy to see that he put a 4-quarter performance together. I know I predicted him as being best on, and yeah, I'm glad he was sort of around that mark based on what I've seen. I think he's one that can certainly push himself up and has some likable traits. Rai Penny, obviously another one to keep an eye on for the mid-season draft, performed well again. Mahmoud Taha as well for Calder continues producing and showing why he is part of that Vic Metro Academy, or the Vic Metro camp. From a Western perspective, Lockie MacArthur only 6 disposals and 2 goals. However, from what I've heard, he showed a little bit of what he can do in terms of his athletic run and jump. I know I saw it in a practice game that Western played against Eastern. He showed a little bit of it against Calder. So hopefully he can put it together for a bit longer and really catch some eyes rather than just being glimpses. He obviously has a limited footy background, as we've touched on in previous podcasts. So they're the main ones. They're the main ones from those games, Nathan.
Well, look, I touched on Rai Penny. In terms of a player, something I'm quite big on is running both ways. Sometimes I feel like with a lot of players that move into the AFL, that's what they struggle on. It's that two-way running. But a stat here is 6 inside 50s, but also 2 rebound 50s. So if you're looking at a stat sheet and looking for a player who's impacting both ends of the ground, Rai Penny's definitely doing that for sure. And now we move to the boys' Metro Derby, Sandy and Oakley. I said in my predictions I felt like it'd be pretty similar to what the practice match was, and it was that in the end. Jonty, you were at that one. Sandy got the job done 11-9-75. They defeated Oakley 4-13-37. And whilst the score would suggest Oakley were pretty inaccurate, the scoreline probably does reflect what happened on that night. So Miles Enders had a great game. Jonty, tell me about what you saw from him. He's starting this season really well.
He is. Well, I know I predicted him to kick 6 goals, and he kicked the first 2 for Sandy. In fact, I think he kicked Sandy's whole score in the first quarter. I think he kicked 2-2-14, and Sandy had 2-2-14 at quarter time. So unfortunately, wasn't able to hit the scoreboard after that, which I think that's the second time he's done it, where he's really good when Sandy aren't necessarily up and about, and they do need someone to kick the goals. I know he did it in round 1 against Eastern when Eastern had a bit of the running. Oakley kicked the first couple of goals of this game, and he was able to be the one who provided a bit of presence for them up there. So I suppose the next step for him is putting it together for 4 quarters and really cashing in when it gets to party time for Sandy, I guess. And it was clear that Sandy were going to go on and win. If he could have put another couple of goals on the board, that would have been really impressive. But yeah, certainly one who I do expect. I think I'm a strong advocate that he should push into Vic Metro based on what I've seen. So, yeah, good to see him performing well again. Tarkin O'Leary, we've spoken about before, his ability to know where the space is, and his movement, his work rate, and his kicking execution were all features on the day. Will Brown kicked 3 goals from the midfield and was a big body against a young Oakley midfield. We know they go with a lot of 17-year-olds through there who all sort of had their moments. Your Jagger Smiths, your Fino Sullivans, Will Lorenz had some time in there. So that was probably the positive from Oakley's perspective. And then Cooper Lord also on the ball had his moments. He's one who we probably haven't spoken about enough given how good his start to the season has been, but he's another one who's generating a lot of external talk. So one to keep an eye on. Riley Sanders, obviously another one in the AFL Academy for Sandy, who showed a few different strings to his bow on Friday night. So hopefully he can continue on his strong start to the season, because it's certainly been quite watchable so far from him. And I thought it was a step up again on Friday night, Nathan.
Yeah, for sure. And now we move to the last game of the round, Bendigo and Tasmania. We were there as part of that double header. Bendigo got the job done 14-13-97. They beat Tassie 8-11-59. It didn't actually, if it wasn't for a second quarter where Bendigo kicked 6 goals, I don't really feel like there was another quarter where one team dominated. So Bendigo had a really big second, and it really blew the game out in the end. A question, and I know we don't focus much on the top end, on the real top 10 prospects, but it was the first time we'd both seen. Well, you've seen Harley at the last year at the Vic Country Metro game, but the first time this year we've seen Harley. What are your thoughts? He's the talk of everything, you know?
Yeah, I saw him at the practice game out at Essendon at the Hang-Up, but that was a practice game. He only played a half. But, seeing him in an official game, I mean, it was a really impressive performance. I thought he was easily Bendigo's best on the day. And, you can certainly see with his power and his versatility and his strength that he's going to really dominate this competition. And I think the hype is understandable, put it that way.
It was crazy. We saw Will pretty much every week last year, and you could, he never dropped off. But Harley, the way I like to put it, as a Carlton supporter myself, he's like a smaller Patrick Cripps if he could play every area of the ground. It was pretty insane to watch. It's a lot of talent for that age. So understandably, the hype is definitely there. But let's look at the players who we thought definitely performed well. James Barrett was someone who, stood out for me. Haven't heard too much about him, but most of the time he only had 7 touches, 3 goals from those 7 touches. So really impactful with every possession, you would say, and a good contested mark. Whenever he did grab the ball, he kicked that goal. So he was great. And Hugh Byrne with 3 goals. Jonty, tell me a bit more about Tom Evans, what we saw from him. Got a lot of the footy, but what was the main attributes of his game?
Yeah, well, he's just really classy. He kicks it forward to the players, to the forwards' advantage, drives out of stoppage, has that real strength. And I think that all came to the fore on the day. That's the sort of thing that Bendigo have been really high on for him since he's been 15. He missed a year last year, or he missed a large chunk of the year, certainly with the stress fracture. So that held him back, but he's been one that they've been really high on, and those have sort of always been his traits, and we sort of certainly saw it on the day. Nathan is a Xavier College boy, so he's one of those interesting sort of country players who also goes to APS footy. But yeah, he was an impressive one on the day. You touch on Hugh Byrne. He bounced back from last week, had a couple of moments that he would have liked back with the ball coming inside 50. But yeah, his forward craft and hands looked really good on the day, and he's also a leader within that group. So those two were probably the main names for Bendigo, outside of obviously Harley Reid. Ollie Poole is one who looks on the verge of a breakout game, and Paolo Kurimo, who you touched on last week, is one that Bendigo hopes can just play that game that really puts him on the map, because he does have a lot of likeable attributes.
Yeah, no, definitely. He was one that he gets his hands on the ball. There's moments he can have that may lower his game in the end, but there's a lot of things to like about him. And like you said, you're right. He just needs that one game to really showcase his talent in full, which I think it will come. It will definitely come. Just, give it time. But he definitely has shown already that he's been fantastic in the way he's playing and plays his game. For Tassie, Tom Beaumont, 3 goals, 3 behinds, but a real impactful game.
Can I just touch on Tom? Can I just touch on Tom for a second? We know how well he played last week. There was a lot of hype about the fact he got 38 possessions. He then walks or contributes to his school's 80-kilometre walkathon. And, you think about how much he would have walked as part of doing that for Launceston Grammar. during the week, and then to back up 7 days later or 8 days later and come out and perform the way he did in a midfield that was beaten. And it was obviously a flight for them. It was an away game. I thought it was a really impressive performance given all of that, or even without all of that. But you add on top all of that and you see why he is one of Tassie's leaders and one who is one of their better players.
Well, I'm just looking now. Hobart to Launceston is 190 k's, so he's nearly done halfway of Hobart to Launceston in a walk, which is pretty insane. So we'd like to talk about these stories that happen around the Talent League, so that's definitely a good one to talk about. Jack Cullinan, another one goal, 16 touches. I mean, it wasn't a great day for a lot of Tassie boys, let's be completely honest. They were struggling with the football. It wasn't the ball movement they wanted, and Bendigo were really first to the footy a lot. And probably those are probably the main ones, I would say, unless you got anyone else. But
no, I thought James Leake had his moments as well. But they're probably the main ones. It was good to watch them live, and it'd be good to watch them against an opposition that doesn't have that standout player that probably separated the two sides, because I do think there's some talent in there. They've obviously got their top end talent like McKercher and Callanan and these types that you talk about, Ari Schoenmaker when he plays. So those guys will be good to watch, but they've got a bit of depth underneath that as well. But I suppose now onto the boys' tips for this round, the last one before they go back to community or school footy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's get into the round 4 tips for the boys. A full round of football. Looking at this fixture in front of me, there is not a gap in the fixture, but it is a lot for the Metro teams. There's a lot of academies this week, so we'll start off with Oakley and Sydney. Sydney, we have proven actually that they take it up to these teams. But I think Oakley really they have to bounce back. Their season hasn't started very well, and this is a game you can't afford to lose in terms of points for the ladder.
Yeah, I know. I'd say the Sydney Academy will win that one based on what I've seen of each team. I really like what they've done. And
then Sandringham and GWS, Sandy comfortably. For me, I don't really think there's a question of if GWS will get up.
Yep.
You're going to make an outrageous prediction this time for
No,
Sandy?
I mean, theoretically, if Oakley played GWS, I would predict Oakley to win, which means theoretically I should be saying that Sandy will win this by more than 12 goals, given I predicted Sandy to beat Oakley by 12 goals. But no, I'll be a bit more tame this week and just say Sandy.
And then Tasmania and Eastern. Tassie obviously need to bounce back after what they perform, how they performed against Bendigo. But I think Eastern, like we mentioned, week in, week out, the talent, the depth is too strong, and will probably get the job done against Tassie.
Yeah, really, another really hard test for Tassie. I think, Eastern will get it done. Yeah, too good.
And then Western play Brisbane. That game with Oakley is at Punt Road, so a double header for that one. Western need a win. They actually got up by a point in the fourth quarter against Calder, but couldn't get the win. So I think this week Brisbane aren't very strong. So I think this is the week for them to get the first win. Yeah,
they provide enough pressure and competitiveness, Brisbane, from what I've seen and heard. But I'd like to see Western get it done and Jake Smith and Darcy Weeks step up in the midfield.
And now we move to Sunday's games. We will be at this triple header down or up in Bendigo. So big Sunday for a lot of the country teams. We're seeing every country team down up in Bendigo. So Bendigo and Gippsland is the first game of that triple header. A really competitive game again. I think this will be probably the closest game alongside the last game we'll talk about. But I'm going to back Bendigo purely because it's right in their hometown. So I think the travel for Gippsland will be a factor for them to get up in the end.
Yeah, I'll back Gippsland. I'll stick with them. Just a note on Gippsland, they're going to be coached on the day by Hayden Bergil, the dad of Kobe Bergil, who's now AFL listed after his season in the Talent League last year, with Rhett McLennan going off and being an assistant coach with the AFL Academy. But I'll back Gippsland to win under their caretaker coach.
Yep, and then Calder and Northern, this is the double header of the academy teams at Craigieburn.
Northern Territory, I think, is it?
Northern Territory. Look, we don't really want to think what's going to happen in this game if we go off previous years of the NT. I'm going to make the outrageous prediction of Calder to win by 120 points.
Okay, wow. I'll say Calder by 7 goals, and I'll say Isaac Kako to kick 5. I reckon this is the week where he can really shine and show his wares as a bottom major.
There you go. And then Murray and Geelong is the second game of the triple header at Bendigo. Another really competitive game. I don't think it will be very close. Geelong probably just edge over Murray with their talent, so I'm going to go Geelong.
Yeah, likewise. I really was impressed with Geelong on the weekend, so I'll say Geelong as well.
And then the second game of the doubleheader at Craigieburn, Northern and Gold Coast. This should be still a good game. Gold Coast have been a little bit better, but Northern should get the job done pretty comfortably.
I'm still recovering from the fact that you made a 120-point prediction. Anyway, I'd say Northern will do it. Anthony Rocker will also be as part of that AFL Academy assistant coaching panel, so they'll have a caretaker coach as well. But I'll say Northern to get it done.
And then the last game of the round, like I said, probably if this isn't the closest game, along with Bendigo, Gippsland, Dandenong, and GWV, should be a very tight game. GWV played probably, I think, the best as a team, probably alongside with Sandy, what we've seen so far. They're probably the best country team at the moment, GWV. Yep. Dandenong probably have a bit more of the talent, but GWV have good talent, but they play well as a team. But I think Dandenong will probably be a bit too strong in this one.
Yeah, I'll go Dandenong by 4 goals. Kobe Ship returning from a minor injury. It was more a precautionary holdover. I reckon he'll perform really well on the day, the intercepting defender / wingman.
There we go. That wraps it up. That's the longest episode we've done, which is crazy to think that behind the scenes we said, let's try keep these 30, 35-minute podcasts. But look, there's a lot. That's a good thing that they're long because it means a lot more players are playing well. And if this week was on, I think next week when we're at quite a lot of games will be a very big podcast. So keep tuning on our socials because we will be posting a lot during Sunday, but we are looking to get quite a lot of content out of Sunday. A lot of players we're going to do some features, a few little feature stories to keep track. So if you want to see them, if you want to keep up with them, follow us on the socials. Otherwise, another good episode. Jonty, thank you for joining as usual. And until then, we will see you next week.
Looking forward to it.